On a suddenly not so casual 7-point sharp Sunday, it is NFL wildcard weekend Sunday morning. It is the show. It is the Shark, the gun, the odds fellow. It is Sharky Waters Nation, 9 words of lifestyle. Ride the wave or get out of the water. A beautiful Sunday it is. 3 games all the way through midnight. We're here in the morning. It's freezing cold in Florida. Guns picks. What's going on this morning, my brother?
He's on mute, so the odds fellow.
Yeah, a little bit rough. Hold on. A little bit rough yesterday. That Chargers game was absolutely brutal. Sorry about that for those who tailed. But guess what? I only come back strong. I only come back and I rebound, and we're going to have a bunch of beautiful plays today. And the odds fellow is with us as well. How you doing this? Beautiful.
Yeah, no, I appreciate everyone tuning in, because if I were you guys, I'd probably just blast that song all day and not listen to anything we're saying. But hopefully you can do that after the show. So we're going to be quick and dirty, 4 games to break down. I can't wait. Hopefully we get the competitiveness that we had in the second half of the second game, and we get that continuing through the next 4, Sunday and Monday. Let's go, baby.
Absolutely. On a suddenly not so casual 7-point sharp Sunday, January 15th, 2023. First play, Orchard Park, New York. It is going down, I am sure. People are chugging beers, jumping on tables. Josh Allen coming from Wyoming to where he functions well in the cold. This couldn't have worked out any better for this guy as a young professional. The odds fellow, the first official of the broadcast. We are looking at the first half with significance and officiality.
Let's go in and get out early so I don't get burned. Now, I think one thing to watch here is, I could have convinced myself the Niners first half yesterday was the play. We talked a little bit about this off screen, right? They end up losing in halftime, blow the doors off the Seattle Seahawks in the second half. So I know Shark's going to give you a look on the full game here. But if you do want to get down on the first game with me, I found a 7 at -125 on DraftKings. A lot of those have been scooped up. So I'm playing that at 1.25 units to get back to that 1 unit win. You could drop it to a half unit play if it's sitting around 7.5. I still don't hate it. This is another divisional rematch here in the playoffs that we get, but yet another strange quarterback matchup. Somehow the theme of this weekend, especially today. And that's unfortunate, because these two teams at full strength, we saw 2 pretty good matchups, right? Historically. And I know Shark will get into the Lions and the movement and the strength here a little bit, but Miami won that first game outright. It was Buffalo -3.5. Miami wins outright 21-19. Then when you come back on the Buffalo -7.5, Miami covers 29-32 in a tight one. Enter Skylar Thompson. This is not the same Miami Dolphins offense here, and I think that's going to be the biggest problem and the biggest challenge right from the get. Thompson came in spot duty throughout the year. A game against the Jets. He started a game against the Jets, and there was another game he came in against the Pats. He's only thrown 1 TD in that stretch. He's thrown 2 picks. Completion percentages way down. Averages, completed averages around 5 yards per pass. That's way down from the Miami offense and what they could and wanted to do with Tua, sitting at 8.2 yards per pass attempt, which is very high, 6.1 yards per play, which is actually comparable to the Buffalo Bills offense, again at 6.1. But when you go really deep here, what was really interesting and why I love the first half spot and potentially some team total looks for the Bills is the home and road splits actually do matter too, not just in terms of the offense, enter Skylar Thompson, which is a problem, as well as the defense. So in 8 home games, Miami games went over only 1 of 8 out of those games. They averaged 21.9 points per game at home. They held opponents to 15 points per game. On the road, that flips. 24.9 points per game average. So still trying to keep up a little bit, but they gave up 30.6, and those games went over in 7 of the 9 games. So why does that matter here? I think a Bills offense that's going to be highly motivated, maybe a la a kickoff return magic like we saw in week 18. Hamlin is back in the facility. I do think that matters. I think this team matters. They think they're the team of destiny. They're going to outmatch, in a tough road environment. I think this would be a tough spot for Tua and the Dolphins, given some of those home and road splits. But, enter Skylar, and I'm all over the first half here. So -7 at -125. I don't mind the 7.5s. I'm still searching for some team totals, both first half and full game, because a lot of those have gotten steamed up. So if you are looking for those, they're sitting usually around 14 and up. There was some 13.5s available early on, and the 14s are juiced, like -140. I saw, I think a 13.5 sitting somewhere at like -190. So maybe not the best plays just in terms of what you have to lay. So I'm keying in on the first half here, and I'm getting out, and that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, and you make a lot of great points there. And you mentioned if Tua was in the game, and going back to the most recent matchup between these two teams, Tua was in the game, and it was in Orchard Park, and it was a Miami cover, as you mentioned, at plus 7.5, 32-29. That brings me to the first capping point in this game. The Miami Dolphins are 2-0 ATS against the Bills this year. As a statistical point, this should reverse itself. And I go back to last year. Buffalo actually had not covered at home against New England in the regular season, an outright loss, 14-10. And what did Buffalo do in round one against New England? They absolutely hammered them, 47-17. And we've seen this all year. I've been talking about this since opening night in SoFi Stadium. Josh Allen, campaign 5. This kid is a hell of a professional quarterback. My favorite player probably in the league amongst a few others. I love this kid's game, and this is accelerated times a million by the emotional foundation in this locker room with Damar Hamlin almost dying on the football field going back about 2 weeks ago in Cincinnati, having one of the biggest, quickest, most powerful recoveries in professional sports history in the locker room last night. I don't know if there's a better motivational point for a professional team that I can recall in my lifetime. This team is going to be so unbelievably focused and jacked up. And you really go to the other side of this game. You get Skylar Thompson coming in here, 25-year-old product out of K-State. And this kid has only one start on the year, 3 appearances. These appearances have been very, very lackluster. You have to go all the way back to a road game at the Jets. He came in relief of Teddy Bridgewater. The Jets hammered the Dolphins 40-17 in disagreeable weather for Miami. The previous 2 weeks, Teddy Bridgewater was the starter 2 weeks ago in New England. Skylar Thompson came in relief again. They did backdoor the spread against New England real late. New England could have kicked a field goal. They didn't. And then Miami went the length of the field in total garbage time. They couldn't win the game. Just a pure, utter backdoor cover. Speaking of backdoor covers, go back to last week. One of the more egregious ones of the whole year. They're laying 3.5 points at home to the Jets. They get a safety in garbage time to somehow get to 11-6. It's like a baseball score. I don't think I've ever seen an 11-6 cover on a 3.5 in the history of professional football. Elias Sports Bureau, check it out for us. But when you really start to go through this from a line standpoint, this is that heavy, heavy line we talked about yesterday where you saw San Francisco hammer down on Seattle, a divisional opponent in the third matchup on the highest line of the year. This is the same thing. It's even stronger. I see this game getting real big time. I think Buffalo puts up 40+ again tonight. Anthony's on the first half as a corollary to their trends in the regular season. I think they're going to come out hot, and I think they're going to continue to push the entire game. This is the playoffs. This is not a 17-18 window gauntlet where you have to reserve energy for next week, theoretically. They're going to want to pound, and this line is telling you a damn good story. We're on it officially. Buffalo minus 13.5, 1 unit. Guns picks, any comments on this, or should we go directly to the primetime afternoon special?
I think the key to this game basically is going to be can the Miami Dolphins stop the Buffalo Bills passing game? And by the statistics, they can't. They're ranked 25th in DVOA as far as defending the pass, and they're going against the number 2 ranked offense passing the ball in DVOA. So I think you're right. I think if you can air the ball out and you can get the ball down the field, by God, that means blowout city. So yeah, I agree with both those plays, game and first half.
Yeah, and second game, as I mentioned, the prime time, not literally prime time, but it feels very prime time. This game is going to have a lot of energy behind it. The New York Giants go on the road in a game that we saw only a couple weeks ago in Minnesota, a tight one, a 27-24 back and forth affair. This line is tight. Minnesota has been running a real clean sheet this year. Guns picks his first official of the broadcast.
I was going to actually propose to you guys before the show if we could actually change the name of the show from Circa Millions to We Fade the Vikings, because that's all we do on this show. But we're also going against the Giants in this situation, and I think we've done a fair share of fading them as well based on their statistical background here. But I'm on the Giants here. Giants coming off a 22-16 loss last week, basically playing their subs, but they played a close game versus Philly that was actually playing for something. But in the last 4 games, they've actually played really well. Plus 7-point differential, plus 19 net yard average. Where you have the Minnesota Vikings, they're coming off a win versus the Chicago Bears, which are basically playing for the first round pick. So they wanted to tank City in that game. Ended the season 13-4, 0-point differential, minus 27 net yard average. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense from how, like, for them to have 13 wins based on that statistical analytics there. But when you look at the key to this game, I feel it's going to be the New York Giants run game, running the football versus the Minnesota offense and keeping them off the field. So the Giants are ranked 7th in DVOA running the ball. They average 4.9 yards per carry. They got Saquon Barkley, so that makes perfect sense. And actually, Daniel Jones is actually a pretty good runner himself. Where you look at Minnesota, their defensive DVOA 19th in the league, and they give up 4.5 yards per carry. So that's going to be a real key to this game. I think the Giants are going to really try to focus on getting the ground game going and then accentuating the pass, because on the other side, the Minnesota pass defense, not good as well. They're ranked 26th in defensive DVOA, but when you actually look at the Giants, they're ranked 10th in DVOA passing the ball. When you look at Minnesota, they give up 266 yards per game, and they also give up 66.7 pass completion rate to their opponents. Strength of schedule is also important in this one, folks. The Giants, they're playing in the NFC East. It's one of the strongest conferences this season. They're ranked 3rd as far as strength of schedule, and you have Minnesota that's ranked 18th as far as strength of schedule is concerned. These two teams met on Christmas Eve, tight game. Minnesota did win that one 27-24, even though they lost the net yardage battle, 96 net yards for the game to the Giants. Basically, key to the game, don't turn over the ball. -2 turnover ratio was what decided that game, and they only won by 3 points in this one. So that's why I think as long as the Giants are able to take care of the ball, if they're able to run the ball down the field, keep that Minnesota offense off the field, and just bury that defense, I think this is a good play to take the Giants here. And by God, I just think the NFC East is going to be really strong in these playoffs, and it starts here with the Giants. Give me the Giants +3, 2-unit special.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump off this before we throw it to the odds fellow for a total in this game. But, when you look at the statistical profile of both of these teams, they're basically the polar opposite of each other. The Giants have, to a certain degree, underachieved versus not the spread specifically, but versus the straight-up environment most of the year to be only a couple games over 500. And you look at the Vikings here, excuse me, guys, sitting at 13-4. This team at home specifically, outside of the division, it's so unbelievably unsustainable. And you really start to go through their games. It goes back to the middle of the season, but they did cover a short line against the Arizona Cardinals. At that point in time, I don't think people really knew how bad Arizona was going to be. And of course, Cliff Kingsbury is no longer the coach, and the team is in complete turmoil in the postseason. But it got even hairier after that. Highly noted with an absolute demolition style loss to the Dallas Cowboys. 40-3. And at that point in time, I think in the mainstream media, there was a dead split between, maybe not a dead split, probably more like a 90-20, where 90% of the mainstream media was championing the Vikings and saying this is a good thing that they're winning tight games. And that would sustain to the Super Bowl because that's how you win. And they weren't understanding that in terms of statistics, you're actually just winning too many coin flips in a row. It has nothing really to do with the emotional capacity on the field. It's purely numbers, and they're just running way too hot. And it somehow continued. They beat the New York Jets 27-22. Mike White threw a pick at the goal line at the end of the game. They were down 33 points to one of the worst teams in the sport, the Indianapolis Colts. I believe that was the biggest comeback in NFL history to win a game 39-36. And then again against the New York Giants, a back-and-forth game late. Giants tied the game with a 2-point conversion, and Kirk Cousins does what he has done all year, quick 35, 40 yards for a walk-off field goal. But the moral of the story is this team is unbelievably hot from like a straight-up gambling standpoint. This is not really domination on the field. It's more of a gamble. And the Giants on the other side of this have been running incredibly clean, I think sustainably clean on the road, because I think they're a good road team. The Giants are 7-1 ATS on the road this year. Couple noteworthy out-of-division covers go all the way back to week 1. We had it in week 1 at Tennessee, an outright win at a +5.5 figure. They covered and won at Jacksonville. You guys see how good Jacksonville is now? That's way more impressive than people thought back in October. An outright win at Green Bay, impressive in and of itself. And again, a cover at Minnesota. I'm not on this officially. I don't really feel like gambling on this game. I got some stuff going on, and I enjoy watching the Giants just from a perspective. And I was talking to Anthony about this. This is one of those weird games where I think this is going to probably be very similar to the Jacksonville game last night, where you're going to be right around it at the end of the game. Because I'm not willing to discount the Vikings. The Vikings will compete in this game, and this is going to be a hostile environment in Minnesota tonight. But that being said, the odds fellow, a total in this game, looking at the first half and looking at an under.
Yeah, and look, if you're not going to tail me or Guns, and we'll get into my play, a first half under, I'm doing the first half thing here again. But the way I would look at this game, if you're not getting down there, or even if you get down there small, is live, because I think you're going to see swings. Some of my analysis will speak to that. Some of what Shark just mentioned will speak to that. These teams are not going to give up. They've had some weird first half, second half splits throughout the season. An explosive Minnesota Vikings team, obviously offensively, and a very, very, very well-disciplined, well-coached team led by Brian Dable in the New York Giants. So again, live value, you could see some different swings here. Just going a little bit deeper on the total, right? And I jokingly am going to call and refer to this thing as the Spider-Man meme game, because statistically, both of these teams have a negative point differential. They're around the same mark, DVOA wise, in a lot of the advanced stats. The Giants are actually higher in a lot of categories. I mean, statistically, Guns mentioned it. This is probably the worst, if not one of the worst 12-win teams of all time in the Minnesota Vikings. It's kind of mind-blowing the way they've been running. But obviously I think that leads to motivation for them, right? And there could be some interesting things coming out of that locker room. But the narrative in terms of the first half here is I do expect a close game. I expect a grind. That first game, although it ended up the score it did 27-24, it was 13-10 going into the fourth quarter. 13-10. There was 23 total points going into the fourth quarter, right? So the first half went way under there in terms of that spot. I think the game script that Guns mentioned is important, right? I think the Giants are going to want to run the ball. They kept Saquon healthy down the stretch. They sat starters. They used him sporadically. They kind of used him limited going into the Washington game that mattered, and then they sat most in Week 18. Danny Dimes, a.k.a. Josh Allen Light, can run the ball. That's what Dable wants to do with him. That's how he wants to use him. So I think you're going to see a lot of that. And these teams both tend to start slow or get behind. There were some crazy stats in terms of, again, talking the Spider-Man meme thing. Minnesota won 10 games this season, 10 games out of their, 12 Ws that they trailed in. Okay? That's ridiculous. Meanwhile, the New York Giants won 8 games that they trailed in the second half. Like pure crazy swings, and right, both of these teams almost just wanted, besides the 33-0 comeback, keep it close, stay in it, stay on the grind, do something stupid. But I want to take it one step further, because I think another real key, and we saw this a little bit in the first matchup, the Giants uncharacteristically had 2 turnovers. If you don't think Dable's going to try to limit that and protect his quarterback and protect his offense here, I think they're going to try and get back to what they did all year, which was turnover at the lowest, I think second lowest percentage, only behind the Detroit Lions in terms of turnovers per game, right? So Minnesota is very good at protecting it at home. They had 0.9 interceptions per game. That drops to 0.4 at home. Danny Dimes and the Giants were top of that list at 0.4, again, tied with the Lions, 0.4 at home, 0.3 away. Okay, if you look at the first matchup, they had those 2 turnovers, so I think he's going to try to clean that up. Giveaways per game, New York Giants second in the league behind the Lions at 0.9 per game, 1.1 at home, 0.8 away. So it actually statistically gets a little bit better on the road. Minnesota, 1.4 turnovers per game, but 0.9 at home, right, as I mentioned here. So I think you're just going to get this whole thing cleaned up. I think you're going to get a slower start, probably a tighter game. And I like the first half under at under 24, minus 120. There's some 23s and 23.5s in the market, anywhere between minus 105 and minus 110. I don't hate those, but obviously, having the added protection, I don't mind going up. So that's the way I'm playing it. And then I'm going to look for value throughout the game. So follow me on Twitter, and you might see a live pick or on the spread.
Yeah, and of course, this is the Odds Fellow at Odds Fellow on Twitter. We had a nice little change up here. It is the Shark that got the Odds Fellow 20 minutes in on a beautiful, suddenly not so casual, sharp Sunday. Sharky Waters Nation, 9 words of lifestyle. Ride the way we got out of the water. One final point in this game. I do think the Giants in the first half have a bit of merit. I think if one team's going to come out flat, it would probably be the home team. And then, of course, do what they do, try to come back. But nonetheless, nothing official, because I do feel a bit of funkiness in this game. As Anthony detailed, both of these teams are both statistically way above their average. One of them has to go awry. Which one will it be? Maybe they go awry together. Maybe that's why there's a first half under in play here. Third game, nightcap, AFC North special 3 times this year. This will be the third one. Baltimore comes in here. Utah's finest, Tyler Huntley. It's very unfortunate that Lamar Jackson is not in this game. Of course, he's been injured in and out of the lineup all year. I would have loved to see Lamar play in this game. This would have been an absolute classic if Lamar played. And that's no shade to Tyler Huntley, but Lamar Jackson is really an all-pro talent. And you get an automatic bounce-back revenge game. These teams did play last week in Week 18. It was very tight on the number. 28-17. That opened up around 8.5, 9. It got steamed to 11.5. You got the final line. You did cover it at the underdog point with the Ravens, but nonetheless, incredibly sharp stuff. Throwing it to the gun. Looking at a total here. You're at under 42 early week, 40.5 now. What's going on here, brother?
Yeah, I actually got it early in the week at 41.5, but I mean 40.5. I think this is going to be a good number. Now you remember the line closed at 39.5 last time these two teams played, which was last week. I just want to go a little bit over the key numbers here as far as for both sides in here. Baltimore average outcomes this season 40 points per game. Cincinnati outcomes this season 46 points per game. But yeah, Baltimore, their outcomes in their last 4 games have been dramatic drop, and that's more predicated on the fact that no Lamar Jackson to run that offense. 28 points per game, which means their defense is playing extremely well. However, the offense is not. But with Cincinnati, in their last 4 games, they played some really low totals, only 33 points per game in that regard. Last week, these two teams met. The outcome was 27-16, 43 points. The line was 39.5. They did go over on that one. But with Cincinnati in the playoffs, they play a little bit more methodical. In their last 8 playoff games, they've hit the under. So I'm kind of playing on the trend on this one as far as the under goes. As far as the side, I'm more leaning here. Probably going to make it official here. Actually, I'll make it official right now. I'm going to take Baltimore plus 8.5 on this one. I think they rebound big time on this one. They're coming off 2 straight losses with a plus net yard average in those games. And when you look at Cincinnati, they're just playing red hot right now. They have a plus 7 point differential, plus 4 net yard average. I mean, the yardage they're playing right to the level of their competition, but they're just winning it in the points because they're just putting the biscuit in the basket where the other teams are not. Now, when you look at the Baltimore defense, the key to this cover is going to be the defense, period. They're ranked 7th in DVOA overall this season, holding their opponents to 324 yards per game, 3.9 yards per carry on the ground as far as the rushing goes. Cincinnati and the boys, they're going to want to pass the ball here. That's their bread and butter. 285 yards per game at home this season, 7.4 yards per attempt, 68.5 pass completion rate. They're ranked 4th in DVOA as far as passing offense is concerned. Now you got to look at Cincinnati dominated them last week. Like I said before, 27-16, but they lost a net yardage battle in that game. Baltimore actually had a plus 129 net yard average in that game, and they held Cincinnati to 257 yards of total offense. So that's actually pretty impressive for Baltimore here. I think, and they were also missing some key players. I'll get to that in a second. The turnover ratio was the biggest problem in this one. They had a -3 turnover ratio in that game. So I think that's going to be a key point for John Harbaugh to basically get these guys go, hey, listen, we got to take care of the football here. They're getting J.K. Dobbins back this week. They held him out last game. So I think they're going to really try to focus on the run here a little bit more, especially when you're dealing with Tyler Huntley and, not trying to put any pressure on him trying to get the ball down the field. Baltimore 8-3 against the spread in the last 11 playoff games as well, where Cincinnati is 6-1 in their last 8 wildcard games, 7-1, and Baltimore 7-1 against the spread in their last 8 wildcard games. They're also getting back Marcus Peters. They're also getting back Marlon Humphrey. That's key to that defense, folks. Those are the big hitters inside the Baltimore coverage team. So I think they're going to match up well with the receivers. They're going to be able to run the ball. I think they're going to keep this game close here. Cincinnati did blow them out last week. I think that's going to be a little bit of a chip on the shoulder to come into this game and really play as hard as they possibly can. I'm going to give it to Baltimore here, and that's a 1-unit play for me, plus 8.5, and also the under I got at 41.5.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't disagree with this. I was looking at Baltimore early week, and I thought just, again, from a statistical profile point, Baltimore being 0-2 ATS against Cincinnati this year, of course, going way back to week 5, tight non-cover outright win in prime time, 19-17. That line was around 2.5, 3.5, real tight. And again, as I mentioned last week, the line was also incredibly tight. I do think this is going to be tight, but I do think what Guns mentioned, going back to last week, highly competitive game. And within this division, these teams play each other tight. Outside of the occasional anomaly game from the Browns, the Steelers, the Bengals, and the Ravens just play really tight, hard-nosed, throwback style football. And you guys are on the under for good reason. You go back to last week, a couple late flurry points, 27-16 to get the total up to 43. This line obviously coming down. It's telling you a great numerical story. This is going to be a tight, low-scoring game, I believe, and the odds fellow has alignment on the total.
I do. I also had to find the unmute button. One thing I was just looking at just to bring up, and we'll dig into this maybe if we can, or I'll look while I know these guys have some other breakdowns. Per Adam Schefter earlier this morning, which I didn't catch, the Ravens are planning to play both Tyler Huntley and Anthony Brown. I don't know what that means in terms of strategy. If anything, I think it speaks to this under even more because things are going to be a little bit more mucked up. But so, we'll cover that, but look for that, online if you guys are checking again. That was a Schefter report. It's on ESPN. He probably tweeted something or a link about it too. But in terms of the under here, I do have it at 40.5 and I still like it. I think these divisions play this way. You add the playoff element here. You add all the games going over yesterday. I just think there's a good game script here in terms of the Baltimore defense, which statistically is playing well and has gotten better and has gotten healthier. I think they're 7th overall in terms of defensive DVOA. I think they're going to step up and try to keep Baltimore in this game and keep it a little bit tighter. You look at what Cincinnati did when they played some defenses of this type of caliber, if not a little bit better. 18 points versus New England. They're the 2nd-ranked defense. 17 points versus Dallas, the 3rd-ranked defense. 30 points versus New Orleans, the 8th-ranked defense. We'll get into that. And 27 points versus the Jets, the 5th-ranked defense. Again, 2 games under 20, 1 game at 30, and 1 game under 30. And I think if they're in that 20 to 24 range, I think this game will stay because I don't think Baltimore is going to be able to do as much, especially with the way the Cincinnati Bengals, and I've been talking about this all year on this show because they've continued to do it, stepped up and slowed teams down in the second half. They did it against the Bucs. They've done it numerous. For whatever reason, in the second half, I don't know if it's adjustments because I hate using that word and that term because I don't know what adjustments somebody would make at halftime. But this defense looks different the last 2.5 years in the second half. So I think even if it's close or Baltimore gets going early on with the right script, maybe Cincinnati slows it down, right? And I think that New Orleans game is key, right? That would scare you off. 30 points. That game was 56 total. The other ones I rattled off were 40, 37, and 39 total, even with the 27-point game against the Jets in terms of the Bengals score. That 56-point game was 9 points in the final 4 minutes. Cincinnati kicked a field goal, scored a touchdown, missed the 2-point conversion. They were losing that game 24-21 and came all the way back. In a game where they're up, they don't have to do that. They don't have to worry about that. They don't have to hang points on the board and get to 9 or 10 points, right, with the touchdown and the field goal combo. So I think that if that's, a potential outlier, and the one thing I will say, because obviously everyone is probably wants to back Cincinnati based on the quarterback trends here. I should have touched on this earlier because it's actually true in all 3 games today. But we're getting some dad interference. So hold on one second. Shark, I'll flip it to you.
Absolutely. And I think we'll just wrap up that game. But we're going to talk about the Monday night game. And I know I'm hyped for it. And I got an official play, and I'm dropping it right now as I just retweeted on Twitter. 10:44 a.m. Eastern. Sunday morning, January the 15th. It will be January 16th, and it will be Monday Night Football. Super wild card weekend, they're calling it. This game has super written all over it. Dallas coming on the road. We're taking it officially at -2.5, 1 unit. And again, a lot going on in this game, but look no further from the opening capping point to a revenge game. This season opened with Dallas playing home against Tampa Bay, a game in which Dallas was horrible scoring the football and did lose the game 19-3. And I think from a line standpoint, the first point you look at, this is telling you a great story. Tampa Bay was favored on the road, -2.5, won by 16, and they come home within the same season and are now an underdog. This is telling you a Dallas story. You start to go through Dallas, their last 4 road games outside of the division. They are 2-2 ATS and 2-2 straight up. 2 very impressive wins. One, I should say, an aforementioned blowout at Minnesota, and of course a cover against Tennessee. But more importantly, those 2 losses at Green Bay and at Jacksonville, they scored 28 points at Green Bay. They scored 34 at Jacksonville. They were up 28-14 at Green Bay and melted it. They were up 21-7 at Jacksonville and melted it. And you guys saw last night how good Jacksonville is coming back in the second half. And you go to the Tampa Bay side of this game. Personally, I think this is the end of the run for Tom Brady and Tampa Bay. This season has been tumultuous on and off the field for Tom and the team. Todd Bowles never got a grip on this unit. They lost a couple key pieces on the offensive line going back to training camp. Mike Evans has been a shell of himself. Leonard Fournette has not had the usage rate. He hasn't been hitting the hole. Something's going on. The whole team is in disarray. Recent history may have you a bit fooled. This team has won a couple home games recently. Unimpressive. Divisional home win, non-cover against the Saints, 17-16. Had to backdoor the game late and had to backdoor cover against Sam Darnold to fumble in his own end to lose the game 30-24 against really a pedestrian Panthers team. You start to go through their out of division home games against playoff caliber teams. This is where you start to be able to cross-reference potentially a Dallas, I would say almost blowout. Go back to the Cincinnati game that Anthony mentioned. Cincinnati came in there and hammered them by double digits, 34-23. Baltimore got them early season 27-22. Kansas City earlier this season did hammer them 41-31. And Green Bay did get them 14-12. And again, I think when you look at Dallas scoring the football on the road outside of the division, Dallas could put up 30 plus here. And that correlates directly to the Cincinnati game, 34 points for Cincinnati and also 41 for Kansas City. All boxes are checked here. We're taking Dallas -2.5, 1 unit. Guns picks, alignment, I believe.
Yeah, alignment, absolutely. I'm on Dallas as well. I got him at -2.5. I think that's what the line's sitting right now. I don't know if it's popped to 3 yet, but I'd say get it under the 3 if you can still get it. But Dallas coming off a tough loss last week. Divisional game versus Washington, 26-6. Who knows if their heads were even into that game. Probably looking forward to playing next week. -27 net yards for that game. They have a 1-point differential, -53 net yard average in the last 4 games. So they've kind of been playing a little bit flat. But I think they get right here versus this Tampa team that is, quite frankly, the worst covering team in the NFL this year, if I'm not mistaken. Tampa is also coming off a bad loss, but they didn't really play anybody last week versus Atlanta, 30-17. So that got to take that with a grain of salt. They just came off their NFC South clinching game versus Carolina, 30-24. They have a -4-point differential, +37 net yard average for the last 4 games. Now, Tampa, not much of a run team. They're ranked 30th in DVOA, 3.4 yards per carry. So they're not going to kill you on the run game. But what they're going to want to do is they're going to want to pass the ball. They're a pass-heavy offense. They're ranked 11th in DVOA passing. But they're facing a Dallas defense that is ranked 2nd in defensive DVOA overall and 3rd against the pass. They also can get to the quarterback, and they can actually put pressure on Tom Brady, who is not a mobile quarterback. Last time I checked, he's 45, I believe. So I think those rickety knees don't have the speed as they used to. 9.8% sack rate overall this season, 11.3% sack rate on the road. So this is a team that can get to you. They can put pressure on him. And Tom Brady, when he gets pressure on him, he either goes down or he could make potential mistakes here where you could get, a potential turnover in your territory and to really dominate the game. Now, these two teams did play in week 1. I think that was an injury to Dax Prescott happened in that game. 19-3, one of the worst performances they had all season. So they're going to want to get right on this spot, especially now that they're a 100% healthy unit. Dallas 10-1 against the spread after a straight-up loss, where the Bucs are 1-9-1 against the spread versus a straight-up loss. You can take that with a grain of salt there because they weren't playing for nothing last week. Also, Tampa 2-7-1 in their last 10 games and 1-6-1 at home. Against the spread. So this is one of those situations where I think Dallas is just the better team statistically, and they're playing a Bucs team that just doesn't have it anymore. And this is Tom Brady's last season. He can tip his cap to the crowd and walk into the sunset potentially and go take his commentary job with Fox. So I think this is the last time you're going to see Tom Brady on Monday night. So enjoy it while you can. Give me Dallas -2.5, 2 unit special.
The odds fellow, the hat, the buy hat, the fandom, couple comments.
Yeah, I'm probably coming with. I don't have it in yet. I'm going to wait to see if the line does get pushed down with some weird Tampa movement. But I'll probably scoop up at least a 2 or 2.5 at least a half unit. I do have confidence in this Dallas team. We were joking off air. I think one of these sexy public dogs is probably going to get blown out this weekend. I think it's Tampa. It was Jacksonville. They obviously came back, and I think the other one is the Giants. There's reasons, to potentially back all those, but I think the Cowboys are a good spot here. I think what people are underestimating is they are getting healthier. They did not need the Week 18 game, despite the fact that they could have still gotten the division. We all knew, every Cowboys fan, the Cowboys inside that locker room, the coaching staff, knew that the Giants were resting starters against the Eagles. So that game ended up being closer than most probably thought. Giants kind of came back and, again, made it tighter, but really the Eagles were in control the entire way. But the Cowboys are getting healthier. 3 key injuries that are coming back. Tyler Biadasz, their starting center, which caused them to shuffle the last game and a half, their entire offensive line, so they're going to be at full strength there. Leighton Vander Esch hasn't played in a couple games. A linebacker that really helps settle things down. Speed on defense, I think, is a big thing. And they're starting nose tackle, Jonathan Hankins, also coming off IR, is going to be back in the lineup. So I think a good mix defensively to a team that maybe got a little bit messy. So, I don't mind the Cowboys spots here. I'm excited to watch it, and I'll probably get down something small on the Cowboys.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And wrapping it up, 36 minutes in the books, a suddenly not so casual 7-point sharp Sunday wildcard weekend, triple header. It's going to be a hell of a one to watch and to bet. My top play, Buffalo minus 13.5, 1 unit detailed to completion in the beginning of the broadcast. Guns picks, New York Giants +3, Baltimore Ravens +8.5, and the under in that game at 41.5, now 40.5. And we sanction that as well. The odds fellow Buffalo first half -7, 7.5, 9 now. New York Giants, Minnesota first half under 24. Baltimore, Cincinnati under 40.5. An opportunity to dominate. Thank you guys for choosing our broadcast. We know you have millions of options. We try to bring you the best hype analysis, conversation, and professional analytics of all sports, and it is the NFL broadcast. Closing it out now, sending it over to the gun. Gun, close them out with some words, some positive energy, and let's fucking go.
Miggy in the chat, I guess we're making it a household thing for your to cash. So congrats to your wife and congrats to yourself for following us along. We appreciate everybody in the chat. It has absolutely been a tremendous season. We want to continue it all the way through the playoffs. 65 of you guys, beautiful bastards watching us now. Please hit the like button and please subscribe to the channel and help us grow in the algorithm. So let's just have a wonderful Sunday. Let's crack some beverages. Let's enjoy ourselves and let's cash some damn tickets today. Good luck, everybody, with all your bets. And as always, let's keep dancing.